episode number 6 of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. I'm Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Matt Long.
All right, guys, we've had a big week of high school football coming up. We had a lot of games going on. We have the Thursday games again. A couple teams in this area picked up some big wins. I know, Matt, let's kind of start with you. I mean, Oak Ridge picked up that big win Thursday. Folsom picked up a big win Friday. What did you see from those games?
Oak Ridge game, just like the first few. Pleasant Valley was the toughest team they played so far, I believe. This game was a little bit closer, 41-10, but Oak Ridge they roll. They're just making it look easy. They're so balanced on offense, and they can run the ball. They rush for 239 yards and they pass for 211. So balanced offense. They're spreading the ball around. They're missing their top receiver, Sebastian Sutton, and you didn't even realize it because they just have so many weapons. And they're playing so carefree, so it's kind of fun to watch them. Quarterback Maddox Varela, 11 out of 15 for 211, 3 touchdowns. Rushing leaders, Caden Koshik, 85 yards, 1 touchdown. Blake Martin, a third, 76 yards rushing. Top receivers, Jaden Anderson, who was taking the place of Sebastian Sutton, 2 catches, 51 yards, and a TD, so he filled right in. And then Kai Reisinger, tight end, 3 catches, 41 yards. Oh, and special teams, Carson Nichols, 2 field goals. Record. So again, the special teams is playing well for Oak Ridge too.
I mean,
Friday,
so
yes.
You got to think for Oak Ridge, like 41-10. I mean, that you hate to say it, but 41-10, that's their worst game of the year so far.
Yeah, but they play well. You're right, but
and then talk about Friday. I mean, Folsom picked up a huge win Friday.
That was impressive. I mean, their offense did not play that well, and they acknowledged that. But their defense and special teams was so good that 4 interceptions of a quarterback into the University of Miami. I mean, that's impressive. Those were picked off by Slade Wilson, Diallo Washington, Greco Carrillo, and Mason Kelly, which his pick secured the win in the fourth quarter there. I did not know Folsom junior lineman Lucas Hardeman. He missed the first 3 or 4 games. I did not know he was returning for this game, but watching the game, as soon as I knew something was different. I'm like, who's this level game on defense? Very noticeable. And according to Folsom coach Paul Doherty, he made everything else happen on defense. He took double teams off Diallo Washington, which allowed him to have a big game. And he was just dynamite for his first game back. So that was a big return for Folsom's defense. And he also plays offensive line. He played some line. He didn't play a ton on offense, but he's a welcome addition back to the lineup for the Bulldogs. Key part of that game, Pittsburgh scored their first drive of the games. In the third quarter is when the defense and special teams really picked up. The special teams, Donovan and Maxie Parler blocked a punt. And the very next play, Austin Mack threw a 12-yard touchdown pass to Mason Nordberg, which put Folsom up 13-7. The next possession, Folsom stops Pittsburgh on 4th and 1 on downs. That turns into a 40-yard field goal for Jake Tremaine. And then the next possession, Pittsburgh punts. Joseph Chavez blocks it. Arion Smith returns to 75 yards for a touchdown. So just like that, and Folsom's in control of the game. So defense and special teams were the key there, and it was impressive to watch actually. And then just on another, Vista, they played Saturday, 35-21 win over Sac High. Johnny Kett, 14 out of 20 for 203 and 4 touchdowns. Again, his main target. Matt Long, 9 catches, 145 yards and 3 scores. And Vista got the running game going. Thomas Keegan, 24 carries for 157 yards, and Xavier Bryant, 10 carries for 74 and 1. So that was a nice win for the Eagles.
Yeah, Keegan, I found when I covered their game against Placer, he's kind of almost an underrated part of that Vista offense that you don't think of right away, but that kid's a bruiser. I mean, he runs hard.
He does, and he's a little faster than you think too.
All right, Aaron, you were at a couple big games for some Roseville schools this last week. Kind of talk to me a little bit about what you saw there.
Yeah, so Thursday night I was over at West Park for actually the third time in a week because I went to a Sierra College game last week, as I mentioned, and then I tried to go to one of their games the week prior and it got canceled due to AQI. So going into the game on Thursday, they were actually probably the only team in the area that had played 2 games. And not being on the field for 2 weeks kind of showed because it was a tale of 2 halves for the Panthers. In the first half, it was just penalty filled and undisciplined. I actually was boxing down how many penalties they had. I started with 4 penalties for 50 yards, and it just kept building down the side of my paper sheet here. They finished the first half with 10 penalties for 105 yards. It was not good, but the Panthers were still actually able to have a halftime lead. They got things going early before the penalties started piling up with a 44-yard rushing touchdown by their senior running back Weston Wade. Cade Vickers kicked a field goal right before the end of the first half, a 32-yard field goal, so they were up 11-6 at halftime. And in the second half, they cleaned up those penalties big time, and they got things going. They look like the Panthers they should be. DeVell Barksdale, their senior quarterback, got things going. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in the game. Their defense was led by a plethora of players, but most significantly, Braden Chenot, who recovered a fumble that basically sealed the deal for them. So the Panthers came away with a 25-6 win. I think they're going to be fine going forward, even though this was the worst game they've played so far this season. If they can clean up those penalties and continue running the ball like they've proven they're capable of, I think they'll continue to be a menace to teams and will be a contender in the FBL. That was Thursday. And then Friday, I've covered Lincoln all year. And, as their announcer, I've gone and I've also gone to an away game too. This was by far the worst game they've played so far this year. Credit to Wood Creek. Wood Creek stacked the box against them, made it very hard for Ryan Henning to run. They did a great job. They limited Thomas Mukai, Lincoln's senior quarterback. But yeah, Lincoln was not really able to get anything rolling at all. Wood Creek, another thing that helped them win the game 21-0 was how well they were able to run the ball. They basically just won the game at the line of scrimmage. They grounded and pounded, kept getting 4 or 5 yard gains that ended up getting first downs and 7-8 minute drives that just tired out Lincoln's defense. Their junior running back, Hakeem Anderson, had 2 rushing touchdowns that both came in the first half. And then Brody Krupp also scored a touchdown in the second half. They took that one 21-0. And I mentioned earlier this week, even if it was a close loss, it would maybe be time for Lincoln to hit the panic button. I think it's definitely time for them to hit the panic button now. Lincoln only had 5 first downs in the game. They have to find ways to get some better plays going to where they can connect and get some momentum building, because they weren't able to build any momentum. And it definitely was a frustrating game for them. You could tell from the sideline as well. So they're going to be on bye week next week. Wood Creek is going to be starting Capital Valley Conference play against Intercom this week. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Lincoln not looking too good. Wood Creek's defense looking pretty solid.
All right. And, I was at a few Roseville game on Thursday as well. This was Roseville and Antelope opening up their CVC play. And I mean, that game was electric, really, for all I can say. I mean, it was a back and forth battle. Neither team really deserved to lose that game. Roseville's quarterback, Brandon Graydon, ran for 5 touchdowns and threw for 1. I mean, he was unstoppable. Karan Borders of Antelope ran for over 170 yards. He had 3 touchdowns as well. Josiah Bateman, quarterback for Antelope, had 3 passing touchdowns, including the game winner to Cassidy Cole. Antelope won 48-42, and Roseville actually got inside the red zone with the last couple seconds left in the game, but Antelope's defense stood tall and closed it out when they needed to. But I mean, that was one of the best high school games I've ever seen. And, talking to Roseville's coach, Adam Ranking, after the game, he had a great quote, because a lot of what happened in that game was not bad defense or bad plays. It was just better offense. And, he said, my favorite quote I think I've heard in an interview all year, he said, sometimes Jims and Joes are better than X's and O's, meaning, you can drop the game plan all you want for some of these players, but sometimes playmakers just make plays. And that's exactly what happened. A huge win for Antelope, who needed it. They were coming in at 1-3. Roseville falls to 0-1 CVC play. I still think they're going to be fine. They're going to be a playoff team, but I mean, a league that's got Wood Creek, Intercom, Yuba City, and then those 2, that's not an easy league to win. So it's, they're going to have to bring it every Friday night if they want to make playoffs. And then Friday night, I was at a game that really opened some eyes around not just the area, but around NorCal. That was Del Oro and Menlo Atherton. Menlo Atherton came in with a 5-star recruit, the number 2 receiver in the country on 24/7 Sports, Jurian Dickey, and Del Oro held him to, mostly Thomas Graham of Del Oro, he held him to 4 catches and 43 yards. I mean, they really shut him down all game, and he probably had 10 to 12 targets, and he was dropping passes. I mean, he was, quarterback was putting them in bad spots. Del Oro's defense had Menlo's offense pretty rattled. I mean, they had a ruthless pass rush going. Del Oro held the quarterback to 12 to 33 all night. And then on the offensive end, I mean, Del Oro just dominated. Tommy Poe had 2 touchdown catches. Graham had 1. Kayasea had a 74-yard reception on a great run after catch. Del Oro ended up winning 42 to 13. And outside of a solid first drive by Menlo Atherton and a big 80-yard touchdown run, I mean, Del Oro was in control of this one from start to finish. And now Dio's 5-0 for the first time since 2018 when they went to a state championship game. And that kind of brings me off to some of the things I've learned about this. But I mean, one thing is, Del Oro people might not love me saying this, but I'm an alum. I can't be a homer, but I'll say this now. Del Oro is much better than I thought they were at the beginning of the season. I thought at the beginning of the season, I was looking at a team that maybe was going to be 5-5, 6-4, a good team with a hard schedule. And I mean, as of now, I had them at 3-2 heading into SFL play, but they're 5-0, and 2 of their wins are against, a strong Menlo Atherton team and a very strong Clayton Valley Charter team. And one of those is on the road, the Clayton Valley game. I mean, Del Oro, and they ran Menlo out of the water. I mean, it wasn't even close. And, I still think Folsom and Oak Ridge are the top dogs in that SFL, but the Dio's right up there with the Rockland and Granite Bay. I wouldn't be shocked to see a world where Del Oro finishes 3rd in that league. And another thing too, another tough league, Colfax actually picked up a big win. They beat Center for their homecoming, 27-21. That was a game that I thought was going to determine it was going to say a lot about the PVL. I know 12 Bridges is a player in there, but I think Colfax and Center are 2 kind of teams that have been pillars in that league for a while. And now the big test of that one's going to be this coming week against Sutter. And I think Colfax showed a lot in that game. They still showed they have some stuff to work on. But now I think that Sutter game coming up is really looming tall. But I'll get to that in a little bit. Matt, let's start with you. What are some things you learned about your teams this week?
How good Lucas Hartman is. I kind of forgot about it. I hadn't seen him play since last year, but he made a big difference Friday. And if he brings that every week, I don't know how much they like to use him on the O line too. So I don't know if he's going to be a 2-way starter, if they're going to probably rest him some series on defense, and he'll probably play on the line because they like to put their best lineman on the offensive line. So he'll probably take some series off on defense when needed, but he's going to play both ways. And if he makes an impact like he did on Friday night, this makes Folsom's defense, all the better. Another thing I learned was, Folsom, Coach Doherty said they wanted to run the ball. They needed to be able to run the ball to beat Pittsburgh. They didn't blow them out of the water, but they ran it frequently, and they gained just over 100 yards, I think, total. So they ran it well enough, and they ran it enough and well enough to, that's part of the game plan. They wanted to run the ball. They did it well enough to get the win. So that was good for Folsom because their offensive line had been struggling and they weren't running the ball that great. And it's going to lead into this week's game. They're going to need to do the same type of thing against De La Salle. So they're the 2 things I learned this week.
All right. I like that. And Aaron, what about you?
Yeah, so I learned Wood Creek's a contender in the CVC if they can continue to step up defensively and remain strong up front. I do think it's going to be tough for them to stop either Borders or Graydon. As of right now, Wood Creek and Roseville play each other the last week of the season. As of right now, I would say Roseville would still win that game. However, Wood Creek's defense played very solid, like I mentioned. They just got Connor Rojas back, who was injured to start the season for the first few games. Having him back is going to be huge for that secondary. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play against a team like Antelope or Roseville. But I think they'll be a contender in the CVC for sure. Speaking of contenders, 12 Bridges, I think, could definitely pose a threat for second place in the PVL. I do think that is Sutter's league for the taking. And, while it's unlikely anybody stops them, Colfax struggled a bit against center, and I could see the Rhinos competing against both the Cougars and the Falcons for that second spot. 12 Bridges won 28-8. I'm going to get a little bit more into that in a second and what made that game so special. West Park, as I mentioned, they need to clean up mistakes like penalties if they're going to contend in the FPL against Placer. You talked a little bit about it, with Del Oro, but one thing I learned is the SFL is absolutely ridiculous talent-wise this year. It might be the best it's ever been. Del Oro looks strong, but so does Granite Bay. It's anybody's league for the taking on any given night. I would still probably say Oak Ridge and Folsom will be at the top, but Del Oro, Granite Bay, and Rockland, they're going to be fighting tooth and nail for that third spot. And, if they manage to upset a Folsom or an Oak Ridge on a bad night, it will make the league even more interesting. Also, getting to a small school, Valley Christian Academy in Roseville, they could be the Forest Hill of last season where they go 7-3 but miss the playoffs due to strength of schedule. The Lions are 4-1, I believe, for the first time in school history, and they play Forest Hill coming up. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, Jordan, how you probably don't want to be Valley Christian playing against Forest Hill, who's really passionate to want to get back out on the field, but they're going to be playing them. They also have to deal with Woodland Christian and Delta. It's going to be a tough league for Valley Christian, who hasn't exactly had the strongest non-league competition thus far. The other thing that I learned is the football community is absolutely amazing. I wanted to get back to the 12 Bridges game for a second. This actually gets into one of my athletes of the week. So 12 Bridges played at Wheatland for Wheatland's homecoming game to start Pioneer Valley League play. And one of 12 Bridges players, Nick Ochoa, who is a junior lineman, who's probably going to be my athlete of the week this week for Lincoln, his older sister, Maddie, she is dealing right now with end-stage leukemia. And she doesn't, I'm not going to obviously get into everything right now. I'll write a piece about it later this week, but she doesn't have a lot of time left to live. And so when the football team learned about this, they decided we're going to wear orange and support, for her cause and her fight to the game. And Wheatland learned about that. And even though it was their homecoming night, you had all of the players on their sideline wearing orange. They painted their field with orange ribbons. They had her out for the opening coin toss. All of the players from 12 Bridges team gave her roses. And even though it was Wheatland's homecoming, they even had Maddie in the halftime parade. That to me shows so much for Wheatland. I know that's not a team I cover, but if anybody from Wheatland's watching this, hats off to you guys. You guys really showed, how amazing the football community is. And so credit to both of those teams, for doing that for somebody who's going through, a tough time right now. So big credit to them.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was when I saw, some of the videos of that and the pictures of that. I mean, that was incredible what Wheatland did and what 12 Bridges did, and especially doing it on such short notice. I mean, that's the type of thing that not only Maddie is going to, keep with her, but also that family is going to keep with them for the rest of their lives. So, I mean, awesome job by Wheatland to do that, and 12 Bridges. And, Aaron, kind of you tipped into it, but you said Ochoa might be your athlete of the week with that. Do you have any other performances that really stood out to you in this time?
Yeah. So, Ochoa, even though he probably didn't have the best stat night, he still has been one of the best defensive players for the Rhinos. He's their fourth leading tackler with 20 on the season. He's their leading sacker. He has 3 sacks. He had 4 tackles, a sack, and 2 QB hurries in the game where 12 Bridges won 28-8. So, decent game for him, and 12 Bridges, I well. So, yeah, credit to them. I mentioned Hakeem Anderson earlier for Wood Creek. He had 2 touchdowns. Wade, Weston Wade, I mentioned him as well for West Park, 12 carries for 114 yards and 44-yard touchdown. Roseville, who's going to be my athlete of the week, finally. It's probably been long overdue with how well he's played every single week. It's Brandon Graydon. Even though I wasn't at the game, I know you were, Jordan, and I was looking at your updates while I was at West Park, and it was just crazy to see the back and forth between him and Borders. Graydon finished with 336 total yards of offense, 6 touchdowns, including 5 rushing touchdowns. He's currently second in the state in total QB rushing yards, and I think 12th in the state in total rushing touchdowns, and he's a quarterback. So pretty impressive there for him. Valley Christian, Chase Clary had 2 interception returns for a touchdown, including a 99-yarder following a tip deflection. He also caught a 21-yard touchdown pass. For Whitney, Lincoln Pfeiffer caught 2 touchdown passes in the Wildcats' 21-7 win over Chico. Girls golf, I want to get in that a little bit. I'm actually going to watch a tournament later today after this, but I got to go see a duel last week for Rockland Granite Bay. Rockland junior Lexi Burras shot 2 rounds of 33 last week, one at last Tuesday at Empire Ranch against Folsom, and one on Thursday at Whitney Oaks against Rockland. Although the team lost both matches, I think she's well in line to contend for SFL MVP. Cross country, John Adams Academy, another small school out in Roseville. Sophomore Mikkel Jopson was 4th out of 112 runners at the Bret Hart Frogtown Invitational and Angels Camp with a time of 21:06 in the 3-mile race. Also cross country, Lincoln's Jaden Trujillo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've covered him for 2 years, so I should know how to pronounce it. He was 2nd in the large school varsity race with nearly 200 runners, while Roseville's Alexander Vigil was 3rd. So those are some of my athletes of the week. Some very impressive performances from around the area.
Awesome. I mean, that's awesome performances really around the area. And actually, Aaron, that brings me to some of mine. Cross country was huge out here too. Placer's boys and girls cross country teams went down to the Woodbridge Invitational in Irvine. They had a pretty impressive finish. Julian Doak won the race for his division by 11 seconds. He finished in 14 minutes, 46 seconds. It's a 3-mile course. Anna Soares of Placer, she's a junior. She finished 6th in her race for her division. And then Julian and Anna both made top 100 finishes in individual for the entire meet. And that was a meet that had over 12,000 runners there. I mean, just awesome performances. And then on the football field, I mean, I already got into it. Thomas Graham holding the number 2 receiver in the country to 4 catches, 43 yards. That is impressive enough as it is. Kenny Goal of Colfax had 4 catches for 89 yards in last week's win against Center. River Roach was 13 of 16, 189 yards. But my athlete of the week is going to be Del Oro quarterback Caden Pinnock. The junior led his team to a huge win. The command and control and leadership he showed in that game from start to finish was just amazing. He finished 13 for 19. I think it was like 249 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, 1 rushing touchdown. I mean, the only blemish in the game was he threw an interception on a jump ball, and I think Del Oro was up 28-6 at the time. So, and it was more so a good play by the DB than a bad throw or bad play on offense. So, I mean, Pinnock has just been awesome. He started the season platooning at quarterback, and he's kind of taken over that QB1 position. And talking to Coach Maben after the game, he said he's just getting better and better every time he gets out there. And you can see it. I mean, even as that game went on Friday night, every series he looked a little bit better than he did the series before. So if he keeps showing that improvement, I mean, watch out. Del Oro is going to be a scary team. Matt, what about you? Would you have any athletes that stood out to you this week?
Well, you know, I sound like a broken record, but Matt Long had a great week for us as he does every week. You know, again, 9 catches for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. Lucas Hardeman, again, Folsom, his first game, had a great game. I don't really have any stats on him, but he was just creating havoc for the Pittsburgh offensive line. But I'm choosing a different sport because I can't give football players all the love every week. So Folsom volleyball was off to 11-0 start, and then they just played a tournament this weekend. So now they're having somewhere in here. They're 15-4. But I asked Coach Devin Elmore, and he put up a sophomore middle blocker, Lindsay Olson. And he said of her, she's incredibly hardworking, extremely coachable, and has been performing at an extremely high level. She's always striving to better herself, and he couldn't be more proud of her development so far this year. So that's who I was going with.
All right. I like it. Now we got another big week of high school football coming up. I think for the first time ever, all of us only have Friday night games this week. So Matt, since we're on you, let's start with you. Where are you going to be this Friday?
Well, I will be at the De La Salle game. It's Folsom, so they're both 3-1. Everyone who follows Folsom football knows, and won't forget last year's 28-27 win over them in the NorCal 1AA title game. And I'm sure, you know, De La Salle has had Friday's date circled in their calendar, so they'll be waiting for the Bulldogs, no doubt. Folsom needs to, slow down their running game. They're averaging 248 yards on the ground, and they run the veer. So Folsom's going to have to get off the field on third down, and they're going to have to keep De La Salle's tight end Cooper Flanagan, big 6'6" guy, from catching any big passes if they want to win this game, and of course, which they do. And Folsom's offense must stay on the field and extend drives. They got to play better than they did against Pittsburgh if they want to win this game. So it should be a great game. Oak Ridge plays. I'm not going to this game, but Oak Ridge is home against Stagg. That should be a easy W for Oak Ridge. And then Vista homecoming this Friday night against Capital Christian. And Vista's 2-3 in the season. They're not happy about it. But if they win this game, and if they play well, they could. I mean, I always say if Vista plays well, they could. So if they can beat the Cougars, this would make them forget about their losses to Placer and Granite Bay and Manteca. So that's a big game for the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, at this point, Matt, I think it's safe to call Folsom De La Salle a rivalry now. I mean, especially with the players and the coaches. I think both teams have that one circled in red every year with each other.
Yeah. Well, Folsom, I mean, they beat them last year, so they got one win against them. They probably like a couple more of them, but we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Aaron, what about you? I know you're going to be at you got some good action this Friday night. Where are you going to be at?
Yeah, I will say it's been nice covering two games each week because I've gotten to see a lot of the teams I cover, and I think between all of us, we've actually been able to cover every single one of our teams at least once so far. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. But I will say I'm happy for once to only have one game this week. But it's going to be a heck of a game this week. I'm going to. It's going to be Glacier Peak from Washington. I can't pronounce the city off the top of my head, but it's just like northeast of Seattle, basically, like about an hour. They're traveling all the way down here to play Rockland, so I'll be at Rockland for that one. The Thunder are coming off their bye week at 3-1. Glacier Peak are undefeated at 3-0. Glacier Peak Grizzlies are led by their senior quarterback, River Leon, who has 7 touchdowns and has yet to throw a pick this season. Also, senior receiver Cooper Jensen has 4 of those touchdowns. The key for the Thunder coming off their bye week will be their run game. Elias Brown has been great so far with 546 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think this should be an interesting game. It's rare to see a team from 2 states away come down or up to California. I'm going to roll with the Thunder in this one, though. I think it'll be a pretty close game. I'm going to go 31-27 for Rockland's final non-league game before they enter the SFL.
All right. I like it. So I'm going to be the only one this Friday covering games with 2 teams from the area. And mine's a league game, and it's one that I think the winner of this one is going to take the championship for their league, and that's Sutter and Colfax. That's going to be up in Colfax. Sutter hasn't lost a league game since 2015. And get this, since 2011, Sutter has gone 54-2 in league play. But there's one catch. That's been the northern section, not the Sac Joaquin section. And Sac Joaquin's a little tougher than the northern section. Defending PBL champs Colfax are going to have something to say about that. And, I mean, the Falcons are going to have some help with the home crowd behind them. Sutter is a very, very good team, though. I mean, this one, I think it's going to be a huge game. Colfax coach Jason Stowers literally said earlier, he goes, Sutter's going to be 5-0 when we meet, and Colfax is going into that one 3-1. So, really, that's 2 heavyweights slugging it out. I think both of these teams are section title contenders, and honestly, what's funny is the winner of this one, I think, is going to be a section title contender in D5. The loser is going to be a title contender in D6. So it's a big one. I'm going to lean towards Sutter in this one. I think Sutter's going to take it 24-17. I think it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people realize. A couple other shout outs too. Del Oro's on a bye this week. Placer it's their homecoming. They're playing Rio Linda. That's one that Placer should handle pretty easily. Rio Linda no longer in the FEL now. They're, I believe, in the GEL, but I got to double check that. Either way, this is a game that's been played for a few years. Placer's kind of had Rio Linda's number most of the time, and I think it's going to be more of the same. Good news for homecoming. I think everyone's going to be getting some playing time in that. And then the other one this Friday, 12 Bridges and Bear River. That's going to be an interesting one to me. Bear River's really had it tough since losing Anders Torgerson. I mean, it sucks when you lose a big player on your team, but when you lose the guy who's your starting running back, your starting middle linebacker, and your kicker, I mean, those are 3 pretty important positions that you have to replace now, and Bear River hasn't quite found a way to do that. They had another tough outing last week, losing to Justin Sienna. They are playing a young 12 Bridges team, though. And one thing about 12 Bridges is they're 3-1 right now, 4-1 now, I believe. But they've yet to put together 2 consecutive good halves of football. And that's something that could bite you when you start getting into league play against some of these teams that, are used to kind of being in some dogfights and some games where you slug it out. That one's going to be an interesting one, but I still think 12 Bridges is going to have the edge in it.
I agree.
All right, guys. Well, it's been a fun week of the Sports Jam, and I'm sure also if you guys haven't noticed yet, I'm in a little bit of a different room today. The Wi-Fi is not too good up in our old conference room, so I went to the one downstairs, and if you see any of the pictures moving behind me, our building is almost 100 years old, so I'm going to chalk it up to the ghosts in the building. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to episode 6 of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. Do you guys have anything you want to add?
No, not really. Sorry for both of you guys. I know you're a Steelers fan and a Raiders fan. We finally got a win this week, but sorry about that. But it was a great week for NFL too. It was a really fun week watching some games yesterday.
I beg to differ. I've been a Raider fan for a long time. I don't think I've seen a game in the last 2 decades that's left as sour of a taste in my mouth as that.
I was rooting for you guys too. I didn't want to see Arizona get a win.
Possibly the worst mismanagement of the clock and play calling I've ever seen in the second half of an NFL game. That was horrendous. But hey, at least we're not the Ravens.
Yeah.
That was rough. All right, Matt, what about you?
Aaron, no foam finger this week?
No foam finger this week. No, I can't do it because I think I lost 4 of my 6 fantasy leagues this week. So I can't. I have no room to hold that foam finger up this week.
6 fantasy teams. That's
yeah, I know.
Hey, I just wanted to add the big game tonight in the Capital Athletic. Vista is on the road at Rio Americano on volleyball. Winner has a leg up in the league, so that'll be a good game.
All right, I like it. Who you got winning?
Oh, well, I got to go Vista, right?
You got to go Vista. Not being a homer at all.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. I've been Jordan.
I've been Aaron.
And I'm Matt.
Have a good one.